If you are planning on having a natural birth and you do not have a C-section plan, I really want you to rethink how you're approaching birth prep. Now, I know that sounds probably really crazy, especially because most of the things that I share on this platform are natural birth focused. But had I had a plan for a C-section, I probably wouldn't have felt as traumatized in my first birth when it ended in the way that I was most afraid of. Welcome back. This is part 2 of Tuesday Tips, and today we are talking all about how do you actually prepare for birth if you want to have a natural birth. Do you just prepare for all the things, the tools, the positions, the breathing techniques for a natural birth? My answer would be no. So in my first pregnancy, I knew that I wanted to have a natural birth. So I did not even allow myself to go down this rabbit hole of what would cause me or make me want to have an epidural, or what would happen if I needed to have a C-section. And I did not even want to open my mind to what that would look like, because I knew I was going all the way natural and there was nothing anybody could do about that. Now, hopefully y'all know that's probably one of the most naive things you can do when preparing for birth, even if you're desiring to have an unmedicated birth in or out of the hospital. Any of my clients who work with me, even if they're having a home birth, are required to learn about and have a plan for if they were going to the hospital, if they needed to be transferred, if they needed to be induced, and if they needed to have a C-section. And you might think this is very intense, especially if somebody has no risks or no things or signs that would tell them that might be their situation. But unfortunately, a lot of us prepare for plan A and we don't think about plan B, we don't think about plan C. And then when we end up in that situation, or if we end up in that situation, we're looking around lost and now we're scared all over again. And this was me. I thought I had all the things figured out. Now, if you've listened to any of my birth stories prior to this, you know that I had no knowledge from what I thought I did, but I didn't have any kind of knowledge at all. But for the little bit of knowledge that I did have, because I did take a hospital birth class, I was not prepared for how I was going to navigate birth if my birth plan changed. And then I became at the hands of the people who were supporting me, my nurses, my doctors, and I essentially just followed whatever it is that they were telling me to do. And now, of course, I knew that I wanted to have a natural birth. So as I was getting induced with Pitocin and the contractions continued to get stronger and stronger, my nurses kept asking me if I wanted to have an epidural. And my answer to them was no, I'm fine. I'll let you know when I need one. They continued to ask, continued to pressure me into having this epidural. What I wish that I would have known when preparing for a natural birth was that there are benefits and there are risks to all these interventions. And one of the risks that was associated with an epidural, I was not aware of. I also had no idea about what Pitocin was. I had no idea the risks of induction and why I needed to be induced to begin with. And I do believe that if I would have prepared in my first pregnancy for when would I need an epidural, when would I need Pitocin, what happens if my water breaks? If my water breaks first, do I have to go to the hospital? How early do I go to the hospital? Hence the last Tuesday tip that we talked about. And what would constitute a C-section? I say all that to say my birth ended in an emergency C-section, mostly because I was uneducated. And that's not to say that everybody who has an emergency C-sections procedure is not medically necessary, because about half of them are, but about half of them aren't. And it's very difficult to advocate for yourself if you have no idea what's going on, because all you worked on in your pregnancy was breathing techniques, position changes, and how to manage the pain of contraction. So if you're like me in the first pregnancy and you're like, I think I know some things, but I really don't know because I've been trying to do this all by myself and piece all of the things together, let's chat, because I literally prepare my clients in the same exact way, and many of them have been able to navigate an induction that was medically necessary and still have an unmedicated birth. Many of them have avoided C-sections because they knew what was medically necessary and what wasn't medically necessary for a C-section. They've been able to labor at home in a safe way because they were low risk and they knew the signs to look for and when to go to the hospital, and they knew how to advocate for themselves. And none of those things were true for me in my first pregnancy. So this Tuesday's tip is make sure that you are getting educated, not only on your plan A, but on the things that you would desire not, the things that you would want the least of, and the things that you have no clue about. C-sections, inductions, epidurals, all the interventions that could come up, figure out what those things mean and how you would navigate those if they were to arise.